Oh.
It's
Yes. Okay, how many of you have seen any of my last talks that I have done? Yeah, a few of you. It is a bit useful to know what is art direction and overall how to think of different aesthetics. But now I will go into more details with this. So basically, you can also look up, I have made a few talks and I think they should be up there about graphic design or about more like art direction if you are interested. So let's get started. My name is Lene and I am the art lead of Placeholder Gameworks, and I love making games, and I used to study in Art University multimedia design, so it was like graphic design and advertising design and a lot of multimedia things. And I will today talk mostly about shape, composition, balance, details, contrast, these kinds of things, and also go more into the psychology. A lot of this is something that I have learned from school. Some of it is something that I have come up with, basically, and think it might be this way. And there's more about like psychology, why people like things, and some of it has some research done into it. Mostly we are just guessing what's going on, but there's like, we can all say that there are some things that look super pretty to us and some things that look ugly and we don't like them that much. And we're gonna look into the reasons why this is so. And oh yeah, not gonna go into colors because colors is my favorite topic, and I think I should do a whole talk about colors because that's another big topic. But as I have been saying, overall colors are a nice thing to just steal. You can just eye drop it from anything you like, and nobody owns the colors, so you can reuse the color palettes that other people have come up with if you don't want to make your own. So firstly, why do we need beauty? So people at least think that this was a survival thing. So we find some things that they look nice to us, and there are reasons why we think they look nice to us. So it basically it is healthy to eat different foods. So there's a food diversity. This is why like colorful foods and different foods appeal to us. A lot of different shiny things that look like yummy or something appeal to us as well, just because it is important for us to like different foods. And it's also important for us to see if a thing is, for example, usable, or if something is gone off, like it's moldy, it's disgusting, you don't want it, it doesn't look as good. So we have emotions tied to what we see, basically. And art overall, it makes us happy and gives us hope. And there is also there has been some research. For example, there was a hospital that had an old wing and a new wing, and they learned that the old wing, where there was no art on the walls and it was like kind of depressing, but the equipment was the same. But the other wing of the hospital that was like very nice, then they found out they had to give much less painkillers for the people in the new nice wing because people were not asking for it. And also they were released 2 days earlier in the middle ground than the people who were in the old wing. So it really shows us that the environment around us, if we live in a very dull city with Soviet buildings that are like gray and they look all the same, monotony, we might get depressed. And if we live near beautiful nature and in a place where there's like people put some effort into their gardens, and it of course depends on a person how susceptible they are to that. Some people are super for some people it's more important, for some people it's less important, but it is still important for all of us to have pretty things in our life. So people have different tastes. I really like this. It's actually a apartment where there's like 2 people live. But there are still some things that apply to everyone, even though in here you can see 2 extremes here, and I will talk about those extremes as well in graphic design. Then it's still like, even if you see that, oh, but people like so many different things, then you can still look into it and see that they are opposites of the same coin, basically, which they might like, but it's still a coin, kind of, in a way. Like, for example, this is a very colorful person, and very like dark and one monotony, like person loving different aesthetics, but they still both love very certain aesthetics that are strong and go to one extreme, basically. So basically I would say that overall it's the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and some people might find some things pretty that the other people don't, but I'm gonna try to talk about things that would apply to almost everybody. Of course, there are exceptions to actually break those rules completely. So this one is a long slide, so bear with me. So when we make a game, we can put, like, for example, a cute cat in there, and people are like, oh, a cute cat. But they will not only see the cute cat, they will be, if the cat is drawn, they might be having emotions to how the cat is drawn, or is it drawn well, or is it like drawn badly. Maybe it's even better if it's drawn badly because it's extra cute for the reasons. But now I'm talking not the topic that your game is talking about, but I'm talking more about how good the visuals look like and what emotions they give to people. So here are some feelings that people typically like. There's peace and calm, and relaxation. There's safety and stability, excitement, diversity, feeling of recognition. So these are the feelings you can make people feel with your things, and I will talk about it, how to do it, basically. And here are some feelings people typically dislike, like anxiety, irritability, confusion and disorganization, overwhelm, conflict, feeling of losing control, and being bored. So don't make people feel these with your art, and I will talk about how to not do that. So firstly, balance and composition, a very big part of what I'm gonna talk. In a lot of cases, it's also about less is more in graphic design, in UI design, in any art that you're adding to the game. So balanced things look pretty. So if you, for example, have a sturdy balanced knife, it probably will work well. This is why we really like things that you feel like, oh, I could grab this up, this could feel very stable and good in your hand, and this would work well for the thing that I'm using it for. If your image looks like that, then it's good. Also, because a lot of plants that have grown symmetrically, those show that they are strong plants as well. In our mind, we might see, for example, there is a bad soil and a tree has been struggling a lot, and it gets like all crooked, and there comes like a creepy tree that might give us like, oh, that's creepy. Maybe you like that, but that's the thing of we love symmetrical things. There has been shown that babies, for example, react to more strongly to faces that are more symmetrical, happily, from the very, very early age when they can recognize like faces at all. So we do like symmetry, and having symmetry in your art will make it more likable overall. So you can balance things like on the left, on the right, up and down. And the most important part here is like if you think of element, for example, let's get this white dragon. You could visualize how much liquid would it hold if you just poured it filled up with liquid. So the same amount should another element have in its size, basically. So if you have similar sizes elements that feel like the area that they're covering on the screen is the same, then things look more balanced overall. So you can also look if any part of it looks heavier and might it topple over. Like if you have a logo and you have some part that's big and there's a very narrow part of it or something, then it feels like it feels it might go like this. So it doesn't give this balanced, pretty balanced thing, you know. It feels like it's not gonna move anywhere. It's staying there, and it's very stable, and it relaxes you and makes you feel safe, not makes you anxious of it. You can also nicely tuck and woven things into each other, like in here. They are very snugly fitting into a tight space. So if you, for example, put together fonts, or you put together like some elements of a logo, UI, things do look good if they're fit snugly. There are also there needs to be some space left, but I will talk about that as well. And basically you can if you feel like something is not right, then you can change it. On the second part of the talk, I will actually go through step by step through some of my logo designs, how I have improved them. So you will maybe understand better what I'm meaning when I'm actually showing you in work. It's very good idea to build things out of simple shapes like circles and squares. A lot of new logos are made like that. Some of the logos weren't used to be like that, but now it's usually just used very simple shapes. And for circles, they should always be circles, not like ovals or something, because I don't know, people love circles for some reason. It's like one part of that balance. They're the most balanced kind of element ever. Very, very nice for this reason. Then I was talking about things toppling over as well. For example, for some reason, this is more calm for people. This one is more calm for people, because this is like the sky. Sky is usually for us is lighter than the ground, and this is the ground. And it might feel like a nice landscape, but this one might, for example, feel like something ominous going on, and this is what I got for this as well. Light ground, dark above, or light above and dark in the ground. So for example, if you make a logo, then having a gradient on the background or on the logo itself that shows the lighter above and darker from the below. It's the way that we are used to seeing things, because that's how light hits things. And if you add something above, it also might feel like it's gonna topple over, and the heaviness is on the top of the picture and it's like really heavy and it might fall suddenly or something like that. I don't know if is any of this, does it sound sane or understandable? Okay, good, thank you. It feels like it's so hard to put these things into like words in a way. So, yeah, exactly. It's like, no. So if you have something on the edge or a bit over the edge or just about something, people like when things line up or they are feeling safe, kind of, like I said, and symmetrical. But if you have something like that, then that actually can be used. And it is used a lot, for creepy stuff in horror games. For example, a lot of creepy characters are usually have something really wrong with them. They're not like symmetrical, or the whole design of everything might be like slanted and kind of off-putting. And this is you can totally use it if you're making villains, making some danger feeling, or if you're just wanting to make a horror game. Yeah. Well, there's always, if you're doing art direction, then you should do a lot of rules basically and stick to those rules. So people love looking at patterns that are just similar shapes together, and they dislike when things are disorganized. They get a lot of calm and nice feelings out of, for example, in here there's this artist has been trying to do different line weights. In here there's 2 different line weights, and that's the most usual way of doing things. There is a inner line and outer line. This one is random, but this doesn't look usually so well. This is just very thin lines, and this is very thick lines. Yeah, like even lines or the areas, they have filled all the areas very well. So if you look in here, the white space or the empty space in here is the same size as here or here. Like it feels like it's all set to like similar size pieces. So if you would go too close to the lines and make some places would have less breathing room, and some would have so much more, so I feel like there's a lot different things that has gone to this drawing. For example, they have one rule of making everything a bit angled. So the lines here are not like rounded at all. So you choose, either you make angled lines, you make rounded lines. You can choose what's the line weight and what's the size of the areas in between things. So this will make things look especially nice. Yeah, exactly that. So sometimes people send to me like some old logos and stuff, and then I give some feedback, and I just did it with Beers and Boomerangs. This was the old logo. I just basically changed the size of the can and how the liquid comes out of it, and actually there's the final version in there. But yeah, I was just like, also it looked like this boomerang is quite big, and the beer can is much smaller. So it felt like it might, kind of not be balanced that well. Also, there's this thing where if your logo is not wrapped around tightly, it might also lead somebody's eye out of the whole thing to something else. So having like this kind of movement going on in here, I was also bringing out the yin yang in here because I love it, and it works well for this kind of. So it is dynamic, and we'll talk about it as well. So spacing, I was just talking about it a tiny bit, but spacing is the most important thing in graphic design, where you do put space. So leaving room for everything is making it so much easier to look at. Like if you look at this one compared to this one, it is easier to read the things, and it really helps person to first that they will like it more how it looks like, because this will give them confusion, and maybe they will feel like, oh, I don't want this, I don't want to read this, even like there's a lot of text and it hasn't been put into small portions basically, and then you feel like I'm so lazy, I don't want to read texts, and so you don't want to give them bad feelings like, oh, I don't want to, or it's hard to understand, or it makes me anxious because all of the things are so squished together. So making UI and things, always leaving the same amount also space in between things. And here you can also see that they have left a lot more space for a very important thing. So to show this is super important, and you will look at this object because there's a lot of space. There's big companies always have, when they are giving out their logos for usage, they are also writing like you should add this much space, and you shouldn't put it on a not blank background as well, because it's harder to read and it looks less professional. So if you would take a big logo, I don't know, Steam logo, and put it on a very colorful background or something, and just put all the elements on top of it, kind of almost touching it, then they wouldn't like that, and other companies either. So don't do it for yourself either. This is my favorite hack to use for text. It is the 150-25 rule. So if you don't know what size you should have for the text, like the big titles, middle titles, and small body text, then this will always look nice. If you, whatever the size of the big title or biggest text is, if it's 100%, then make this like half the height basically of this, and the small text that is a body text that goes to like long descriptions or something, make that 25, and I will promise you it will look good every time, and you don't have to push it for like 10 hours for like no, it should be bigger or smaller. It's just a nice hack to save you some time if you don't want to go really deep into graphic design. A new thing that I have learned also is overall high color contrast is useful for readability. So you're making logos or UI, then that is also really good to have high contrast. But there's a thing that having too much contrast might also be bad. Anyways, in here you can see there's low contrast color text and background in here, both of these, and it's not as easy to read. In here there's high contrast color and text, so it makes it much easier to read. And just when leaving space and making the contrast high, then it's already quite good, I would say. Yeah. And some people have this problem that there's like halos on when they're reading text that is on black background. So if you're thinking about accessibility, it's good to not have complete contrast on your text. What is a better idea is that you don't use pure black on pure white, or pure white on pure black, but you would use dark gray on white or some other dark color on white, and white on like dark gray. This will mean that the difference is less annoying to the eye. Overall, light backgrounds are easier to read on if you have dark text on it, but I feel like it's a bit boring, and I feel like in a lot of games actually it looks super cool when we have this version. Just remember not to go full contrast, and it's gonna be nice for everybody to understand the text better overall. So yeah, high contrast in text is good, maximum contrast is bad. That's a quite easy rule there. So there's contrast, of course, between elements and backgrounds, and that should be different as well. I remember Jay also talking about this a bit. So there's quite a bad thing where everything is super contrasty and calling for your attention. Every little thing is like, there's this information, this is red, this is yellow, this is all white and black, and everything is highlighted, and it's just like overwhelming, kind of. And it's a bit too much for the eye. This, for example, I feel like is kind of too little contrast, and you don't have the dark blacks or the whites, and everything is blending together a bit more. Even though the character here is more high contrast than the background, it's still not super readable. But for example, in Slay the Spire, I feel like the backgrounds are very different from what the characters look like, either color-wise or just how they're shaded. So contrast between elements gives your eye a break. So background, whoa, that's a nice typo. I love that. Yeah. So don't do this. Never do this. There's so much going on. There's like everything is over. People hate when things overlap each other. People hate when there's like you can't make out what is happening in here. There's too much text, too much. Everything is very over the top. I mean, maybe the background is a bit toned down, like the gray mess. But also people don't like when the background is just, just gray. So it's nice to have some interest in there as well. Yeah, I guess don't need to tell you that this is bad, really. Yeah, but so we were talking about how simpler objects are good, how you should use basic shapes, how you should make them balanced, very clean, don't have this many elements, have it more neat, nothing is going over each other, all that. But then there's the visual interest component that is still missing from the thing. So people do like the simplicity, but there is a balance in between that as well, because it might get a bit boring if everything is just, circle, circle. You might have to somehow spice it up, and you could add more elements, for example, more different elements that will be interesting for people. And it's a matter of taste as well, or the style that you're going for. So you can do, the question is, you can do both tastefully, and you don't have to go to extremes that the minimalism is just the most minimal thing ever, or the maximalism is the most crazy ever. But you could try to have some sort of interesting elements. Like even this is very minimal. You have like some interesting shaped lamps in here, and some textures added with a blanket in here. And even this is like very over the top. You can still see that there are some colors that are going together. Like there's like flower patterns everywhere, so there's still some rule to it. There is some wooden stuff that also is like brown ceiling goes together with well, and so even though it's all over the place, there are still some rules that make it not just clutter, but make it more tasteful, as people would say, for this kind of a thing. So repetition, it really gets boring. So having patterns are good, as I said, but there needs to be some interest to it. And one way to add interest is having like dynamics or a like perception of movement. Like even though this looks nice and it is static, I'm not sure how I feel about this square being on the edge of this. This also feels a bit weird. But making things dynamic makes them more fun, playful, interesting. But it's good when there's still like rules to it. Like for example, this wave, you might even see it like it starts in your eyes. You would see that it will probably splash down, and then comes the calm after it. Basically, it's a moment that is captured. In the same way, like just movement, having like shapes that feel still balanced but are playful all around, might make the art more interesting. Also, yes, people just like shiny stuff. So if you add like small highlights or high contrast and happy colors or a lot of light sources, a lot of people do have like, shiny. Some people again more than others. I'm totally one of those people who's just like some shiny thing, oh, the glittering or something, and I have to. But yeah, it's so. Even though, like for example, a very dark game, Alan Wake, there's a lot of in its marketing material. There's a lot of shine there, light sources. Him standing with a flashlight, showing it to the camera, kind of. It's all like flares up and stuff. Yeah, just that. I don't know. Maybe sun makes us happy, and stars overall. That having light, and we need that sometimes as well. This might be a reason. I don't know why, but shiny is pretty to people. So adding some contrast to things makes things nice looking. There could be size contrast. There's a big element, there's a small element. Like there's a big elephant and there's a small cute mouse or something, and then it already is like, ooh, that's interesting visually. You can have color contrasts, you can have shape contrasts. For example, like I said, pattern, yes, there's pattern, but there's something different going on in there as well. Type contrast. For example, in graphic design, you have a title that is a sans serif, very blocky, bold one. Then you could add text as completely like a very beautiful script, kind of with serif font to it to balance it out and make it more interesting. So those two will be balancing each other out, and that can work well as well. And I'm saying don't be afraid of trends as well, as see how things change. There are reasons for it. I brought out this Firefox logo, for example. A lot of logos have been going through a trend of getting simpler and going back to basic shapes. It is actually because we are given more and more, we're like bombarded with more and more information. Our screens got much smaller. We need to make like visibly recognize things very fast. There's like life is super fast. There's not only a few icons maybe on your desktop, there might be more that you have to instantly recognize and make out of. Life is fast, we are more stressed, we are more overwhelmed with everything. So a nice, clean and calmer design is now giving us a bit like rest from that. Of course, when things get too simplified, then this happens again where people feel like, oh, everything is so minimalist and boring. Currently we're going towards, of course, a bit friendlier colors like these gradients as well, in things that give us a more like just feeling that it's friendly and nice. Yeah, so don't be afraid of trends. Why I brought this one up is this one is Fallout 3 and this one is Fallout 4, and the games were like, one game was Fallout 3 was like really muddy and dark because people were just able to make some realistic 3D stuff and they wanted to make it super real. But now we're moving towards more like a very colorful world because, well, that's another thing. People do see colors. Oh no, I'm talking about colors. People do see colors differently because when they have different mindset. If you are depressed, you will actually see things as grayer than they are, because your eyes, or if you're super happy, you will get more light into your eyes, your pupils will be larger and it will get more light into it. So a lot more games are now showing the world not as, even if they're horror games that are super dark or kind of post-apocalyptic, they do add more color to it because color actually makes people happy and makes people feel they are happy in a way. So yeah, it's don't be afraid of trends because they are not. I'm not saying like a trend of, oh, this month it's cool to do this thing. It's more like see where the art is going and you can try to replicate it, especially when you know why. Why is it going there? Why are people loving this kind of art more? So why should you make this kind of art or design more? Depends on what the emotion is that they need. Maybe they will get super freaking bored soon and then they need some more... it's happening already in a way that they need some more like very flowery and detail-y things that are like very overboard. So yeah, because of, again, this trend that is going on, so to contrast that somehow with other art. Yeah, so this is the practical part of the talk now that I'm gonna talk through something that's going in my head. If you have any questions, you can let me know as well.
I actually do have one.
Yes?
Can you go back to the slide with the font sizes, 10, 50, 20?
Yeah.
I always struggle with like the spacing you have when you choose different sizes.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
I'm never sure. Should I take the 100 size to go down before I switch to the next size? Like, how do you do the spacing of the different?
It
sizes?
depends, I would say, like, yeah, it's spacing. It's like a lot of times, like 75% of the like the font size having spacing with that, it looks good overall. For this, for example, I was writing just stuff in here, copy pasted some stuff, and I used fonts that I use usually for craft that I thought, well, I like these fonts. There's a problem though. For example, in the title, they have these legs in here that are gonna disrupt, and because they have those legs in there, they might need a bit more space for that. Otherwise, they will just run into other things. So beware of two weird fonts like I am using in here. It's hard. This is you just try it out. I think because there is the rule that this rule works well, but the spacing I don't have a hack for the spacing itself. Just have it like quite the same, but I would say like 75% of the the height of the font having spaces in between. So if there's bigger font, it needs more space as well. Going to the next one, then that's the smaller space, and here as well. So it's it depends on the I guess that's
Maybe this is a big question. It's in relation to the same slide. Do you have 3 different fonts going on there?
yes.
Do you think there's an upward limit of how many fonts you
3
should use?
I would say, yeah.
And what I suppose what characteristics of those fonts should be used to work together? Or
Yeah, I would say one font is really boring for people, and it just looks like, oh, you scaled up or down. That doesn't look refined at all. 2 is good. 2 is very good if you get like different fonts. Again, kind of blocky fonts. Use like thick fonts for big titles. Use the fanciest, wow, fonts for middle titles, and use something that is just readable. This one is like a handmade font because I just wanted that handmade aesthetic a tiny bit for it. But using just a readable font is enough. Wait, what was the question? About
just how
how
crazy-
many?
How crazy do you go with fonts and
Yeah.
what rules, basically?
Exactly, 3 is the maximum. If you just put the 4th, then it starts falling apart, and it's not good anymore. Really, I feel like this is a quite good balanced one for this. Yeah. Any other questions? No. We can just go and
Well, actually,
yeah.
one
yes.
more question in relation to that.
Yeah.
It's like, should you consider things like localization when picking fonts? Because
Yeah.
obviously there's obviously Latin-based alphabet and stuff, but there may be other languages, or do you leave that in the hands of localizers? Or?
Well, basically, yeah, if you're localizing your game and you have different fonts in there, for me, I have either chosen like fonts that could be like, for example, typewriter font. So a lot of different languages have typewriters, so you can use that font. Handwriting font, a lot of different languages have that, so you can use kind of similar font. But if you have localization in mind with your game, you should always leave more space in your assets or backgrounds. Just, don't be shy with the space for the text. If there's a text box, just have more space, because you don't know how, maybe the text in another language will be so much longer, and then you will, then you will just run out of space. Yeah. Okay, and now let's apply this. Broken Alliance. Firstly, I was thinking of we were working on different game names. What should it be? When I was choosing also with others the game name, then I was thinking, okay, the name should be somewhat good on a logo as well. What I mean good on a logo, that it would look balanced. It has 2 almost same lengths. This is a bit longer. Ignore these pink boxes in here. I don't know why they are there actually. But it's like from my old work files, actually, just screenshots from those. So I was looking at, okay, 2 words and they're kind of the same length, and I think it will look good together. So even if before I put it into a font or something, I think when I think of title that could it look good on a logo? Shorter titles look good on logo. If there's too many words, if it's a sentence, well, good luck with that. But there are ways. But it's the longer your title is, the harder it is to balance. Or yeah. So I was trying out different things. I felt like, well, I mean, didn't like any of them too much. I was just like, okay, this kind of looks good in here. But for example, I was trying to balance them in a way, putting them together. This one is the weakest, I think. I like this one more because maybe making the B bigger, so it would like line up with this. So you would have this invisible box basically around everything that looks probably good. Yeah, so having like invisible lines lining things up, how I did here as well. There's a box, basically invisible box in here that makes them more. In here you don't have much, they don't really go. And it's also broken alliance with a big. So I felt like you're not gonna say a title in Broken Alliance kind of way, because it's a bigger thing. Is more, you will maybe see Alliance first, and then you will be Alliance Broken, which doesn't make that much sense. So I did like how it just this word looks like. I was like, I'll figure rest of it out later, because I wanted to do it in pixel art and a very like fantasy golden thing. Then I started to render it and I was like getting stuck as well. I was like, well, it doesn't look good on its own. I need to make a logo thing for it as well. For the game, we have 4 different factions. So I was thinking of having like different elements, like earth, like a leaf, water, like a wave in here, fire, and wind, or like air was basically like a flying. We had different factions that already had their elements and had their some icons, but I wanted to put them together for like the beloved yin yang into 4 separations, not like black and white, but because it's the Broken Alliance, it should be able to be one full 4 factions all together, but also you could break them apart and they are all separate elements themselves. So this was the first one that I made, and I was like, okay, all the lines have to be the same width. In here it's a bit thinner, that doesn't look good in here, but I'm trying firstly using very simple shapes and using the same like wideness in here in the lines, and it's like, okay, it's look okay, but it's very boring. It's then I felt like it needs more dynamics, so I went in again, added some elements to it. I was like having similar elements everywhere as well in there, like kind of triangles with a curved way that makes it all look more one basically. Otherwise this would look so out of space, like from everything else. So to tie it in like that, I made it a bit too dynamic. It started to lose its correctness basically. So I was like, okay, let's take it back a bit. Let's make sure that all the lines are the same. Let's make sure that all the curves are kind of very soft curves. Let's make sure that these are kind of the same size, and so also that each of them, like for example in here, I think you could put quite a lot of liquid into this leaf, but not that much into, for example, this one or this one. So I balanced that all 4 are the same volume, that they would take the same pixels basically, kind of, on the screen. Then I was like, okay, maybe I'll make it even more simple with these things. But this didn't work out really. It was like, oh no, you will only look at this and this looks like a Pokeball now or something like that. And also I added from here, you don't see those elements. I added those elements into each of the factions, edges. So now you have a complete pattern. You have the same width, but I went back to that. And which I also did, I was like, something is still wrong with this. And I flipped it. And I was like, perfect. Now it looks great. I like now when it's flipped. So this was my file. This was how I was actually doing it. I'm putting like full shapes that I have cut out already, applying it to different places, copying, pasting them to make the white space basically. This is just how my files look like. And what I do is usually every iteration, I'm like, oh, this doesn't work, I need to change it. I won't change it on the same thing. I'll just copy paste, let's make it changes, copy paste, let's make changes, copy paste, let's make changes. Because then maybe you will see, oh, that's not that good, I like the last step more, like this. So you can take from the last step. So if you're making a logo, that can really help. Then I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's put the text together with this. And it's like, well, this works out quite well. Like, it's on this interesting icon in here, like this one. It covers it and it's not that good. I was like, this kind of works as well, but if you would put it in a banner, then it would take so much space up basically. I could use these elements separately like I wanted to. And so this, I don't know why, but I was like, it doesn't look good. But then I was like, this one maybe would look good if I would flip it, and I did flip it. And this is how the logo looks like now. So 2 versions of it. It looks kind of weird, I think, but that's the theme on the slides right now. So one is more if you have to use it in a square, and the other one is if you have to use it in this. Could it be better? Maybe it could. I'm still quite proud of this one. I really like these balanced elements in here, and I like that it's a pixel art logo. It just makes it very unique, I think. Death and Taxes. Well, this was the first font that I put on that. I really wanted to have some. So I worked out with our concept artist what should be on the logo. Then we thought like a skull needs to be there and some bookkeeping stuff. And then I'm like, skull in a book kind of looks very cool and magic-y. Yeah, that was it. But we tried different things out. It was just to have like a outer lines thicker and thinner inner lines and very flat color. And I did add like a kind of similar-ish line weight text on it to make it look nice. It was okay, but I moved on to this kind of, I don't know why it's so pixelated, but yeah, this kind of logo. And in here, yeah, that's I'm like this because it's dynamic. Again, if you look, space in between everything, all the elements in here, it's the same space if you trace it. And kind of the thinner lines and the thinner lines on this font are the same thinness as these lines in here as well, I would say. So it looks all together. And everything is filled, everything looks tightly together, and what really ties it together are these like drops that I made. And the idea of it is it's a bit dynamic, a bit more interesting than the straight one as well, because it's also going with the like edges of the book, and the animation itself that I made as well. Like at first it actually writes it like straight, and then there's a bang. So there's like it's very dynamic. It just like breaks it kind of, and it has a lot of playful because of it. I feel like all the bright colors and yeah. So I guess it works well. Me telling how good of a job I have been doing. Great. I have made some. That was really fast that I did, but I did some illustrations and logo for a food delivery app. You can see the same things in here. Line weight, same everywhere. Everything is made out of very like simple shapes. Like the egg is made out of four circles basically, and again, could be better. I'm quite happy. Logo, very, I don't know, 10 years ago maybe that was very popular style to have this friendly, round. Oh, everything is very round in here. You don't have very many very sharp edges, maybe only on these boxes, but they're very cute still. So yeah, this kind of stuff. I have done some event things. I would tear this apart though. I did this logo for some time ago. The first logo that they had was even worse, but I only made it a bit better. I feel like there's problems in here. For example, in here you can see there's different elements that are adding to the visual clutter. Like there's these spikes in here. I think this is not completely round as well. There's something off with it. Then there's these wavy things, and there's too many elements. I kind of like the font inside of this because it's all unified. The edges here, all like there's not much space. Everything is used up, very very tight. But in here again, you have a lot of space on these elements. It's not too bad. It does get a bit close in some places, but it's like, it's okay, but in here, for example, everywhere you have like a kind of a tangent way if you get too close with some elements to something. So I would, yeah, I don't dislike it, but I should do it better. Some other things that I have made, the Global Game Jam has their own asset kit actually, like is saying these are the fonts, these are the sizes you can use, but I just added a dragon to all of it because we had dragon theme in our local game dev thing, and I was quite happy with. So you can, only thing would be maybe some of the places it's kind of going together with the text, so having text on top of picture is always a bit hard. Then we had this artist make this crazy background with aliens and stuff, so we used this background for all of our events, and then there was an event where some people came to talk about Disco Elysium on the local game dev scene in Estonia, and then I put together this kind of thing, even though it's very over the top and crazy, and it's still okay if you change the colors into like similar thing and blend things in. It might still work, even though it's very over the top. But if you leave every element a bit space around it and don't clutter it up, everything has its own focus, and it's not just randomly put in there, then it works even if you have a complete mess going on in there. It's just all about how you space things, I think. some other images that I have made that I'm proud of. Again, all of the same things are applied to this, balance, line weight, contrast, the symmetry, simple elements, dynamic movement. When something is on one side, then something else should be on other side. So it's not, everything is not one side. Well, this is like a center composition for those, which is the easiest. There are different compositions with different ways, but yeah, that's another composition is, yeah, there's a lot more about it. So Craft, I was recently making the logo for that, and I actually, this is oftentimes how I'm working with other artists as well. So I was drawing this up, and I was trying to put all of the elements, again, spacing in between. That took a lot of time. I was redrawing it many times to get the spacing in between everything right. It's still, for example, there's still some issues on this one. It felt a bit too loose, and it feels like there's something missing in here. If you look at it, it should be a bit more, because there's a lot in here, and there's a tiny bit less in here. So to fill it in a box again. Even also, it makes it a bit harder that I decided to make it slanted, like old-timey thing. But again, I wanted to add some dynamicness to it, and yeah. So yeah, this was the final just text. Then what I did, I was like, okay, I need to have a background as well, like it would be on a wooden slate. So I made a very simple thing cut out from an asset actually, and sent it to our artist and said like, hey, could you make this? They sent this back, and I was like, this is okay, but this doesn't make sense, for example, in here, because there's just empty space suddenly. And if you're gonna add a lot of, or if you're gonna add one kind of this kind of stuff, maybe add more. So I told them to make a more like flowy one, and Adam sent me back this one, and I was like, okay, that's great. There's some problems here though. It's spaced a bit weirdly again. In here you can see it goes almost against it, and there's a bit too much space left over in here, so I just made a bit of fixes in here. I felt like these edges are too empty, so I actually added some shadow to them. They were like very plain, so I added shadow to the places in here where there's emptiness. So I wanted to again have it very compact, and we had this issue here again. This is empty, and it feels like there should be something in here. So I was like, I sent it back to him again, and put an owl in there as a meowl. Put a meowl in there and said, please make the meowl here, like very fast, just in Paint again. And yeah, Paint is my main tool as a art director, because it loads so much faster than Photoshop. And I don't need to do anything. So I'm always sending back things, and I'm like, sorry for butchering. I love butchering your art in Paint, but here you go. And then yeah, they made this, and yeah, that's the final logo. I feel like it's quite balanced, even though it has so many elements to it. Also, I added my own kind of, because the game is a bit similar to Death and Taxes, then the font is a bit similar in a way. It still has those drop elements in here, like shiny elements, the things that are very me to add to things. So it's kind of my signature in this one. But yeah, this was what I was thinking of. So we're at the end now. If you remember, we went through this slide, but now I added a bit more to it. So this is basically feelings people typically like: peace and calm, relaxation. You can add this with balanced elements and stability. Safety and stability, basically the same. Things have breathing room and are symmetry, and have symmetry as well. So like there's space in between elements and the same kind of space. Excitement, so it's not too boring. Dynamic elements in movement you can add. Diversity, like in the food when I was talking that people don't like the same always. I mean, depends. Some people can eat pasta bolognese every day for lunch and dinner, but usually it's not the case. So different colors and shapes together are nice. Like a pizza where you have crispiness, fluffiness, then you have a nice sauce, and you have different elements with different textures. That's great. And also you recognize things, so everything is like simple to read and easily recognizable shapes there. People don't like anxiety. Things look like they fall over. People don't like irritability. Things look low quality or sick or might break on using. They look slanted, they look kind of brittle, they might, like a glass sword, basically. You don't want to overwhelm them. Too many items fighting for attention, too many details, it's too much. Confusion, disorganization, and conflict, feelings of losing control. These are hard to read elements, can't understand what is going on in the picture, things blend together. This might be too little contrast, too like crazy shapes, everything together, can't understand. But also being bored with if everything is monotonous and patterns are too simple, so that's also the other end of things. So, in conclusion, people like beauty and you can offer it to them. Balance things and apply patterns to make them pleasing looking. Also, don't forget to make them look dynamic, to make them exciting. Yeah, that's me. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
With the logo for Broken Alliance, did you already have the colors and that kind of like realistic style shading in mind while you were making the silhouettes, or did that come later? You just sort of didn't think about it until you finished like a good looking silhouette?
Well, one thing that I had in mind that I had to have was I was looking at all of the fantasy, different fantasy games, and almost all of them have golden text with some 3D-ness to them. It just shows you, you look at it and you're like, oh, that's a fantasy game. Like, even though I'm doing some weird things like making a pixel art and stuff, I wanted this to be, when you look at it, then it looks like it's a fantasy game. I think I have somewhere a flat version of this as well that can be just a vector version that can be very easily used as well. But yeah, because I made the gold look as good as I could in pixel art, and this is the way I was able to do it. This is why I also added the same kind of 3D-ness in the elements of everything else as well, to tie it up together. Did this answer the question?
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
when you had the previous slides where you were iterating on the composition of did you know the colors and the shading style while you were doing this?
I knew that I wanted to have them in different colors, so each element is different color, but it wasn't important yet. The shape was the most important thing, and I didn't have to keep it in mind. It needs to work. It needs to work like this. I think it does. I think this works quite well. So if it works like this, then it can work with color as well. You can add color later. A lot of art, it's nice to actually make things in black and white, because then you will see the contrast better as well if you do it grayscale or something. Yeah, I added the finalizing later in the end, actually. Yeah.
If you go back a couple slides, I realized that
Back.
the capital A of Alliance is like a different font, I guess, or maybe not. I just wanted to ask you if you draw those fonts
Oh yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. Basically, the problem was with that font itself was that I used a certain font and then I changed it up afterwards in here. Like for example, yeah, there's different changes that were made into it, but the big A looked like this, but even more complicated, so it wasn't very readable on that font. So if I was testing things out, then I just changed it into any font, like kind of one that has serif in there as well to understand, because I didn't want to exactly do this font. I wanted to, yeah, have an A that is readable as an A, not just some crazy
It was
squiggle.
not intentional, right?
Yeah, I didn't like that A, so I just changed it out. Anything else? No. Oh, yeah.
I had a question about the Death and Taxes logo.
Yeah.
How did you
Well.
come up with like using the yellow on the eyes as squiggly lines?
Oh, where was it? No, it was like after the broken lens.
Yeah, the broken
I think. So basically, Death and Taxes. Death and Taxes, I already decided to have the colors of red, blue, and yellow, only one certain hue. Everything else is in grayscale. So the whole game, actually, here you can see, no more colors in the whole game at all. And that really gives a really good look to it and a very strong branding. So the squigglies, I wanted them to kind of glow some way. And I wanted them to maybe have fire in eyes or something kind of cool. But then I thought like scratching it out makes them look kind of cool as well. So something like an element that would be easy to make, but also it looks... But yellow, because blue was used already and background was gonna be red anyways. I wanted to have, in all marketing stuff, I wanted it to have just very pure red background. So it would, I'll show you on Steam. Let's go. So it kind of pops. You see the red, blue, and yellow in here. It's very contrasted to the blue background that Steam overall has. Doesn't text. This is the soundtrack, also very poppy yellow background in here. So all of them have very strong red that is like instantly recognizable. And so yeah, yellow because that was the only color left over. And I guess it's like glowing or something as well, like that kind of color. Yep.
It looks really cool.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, and on a similar note, what about the swirling on the skull?
That was actually by our concept artist. I really like the swirls and like small kind of elements that actually, if you look at some shapes, like I said, people love circles. People also love the leaf shape a lot. People like gems shapes and hearts and stuff, and they also like swirly things. Swirly things are nice and cool, so add swirly things to places and they will look cool. Yeah, it's just something about those shapes there. I think they're all rounded, but balanced somehow and dynamic somehow. it works. So yeah, I think it's just cool. Yes.
This is kind of a question in relation to probably Craft Broken Lines and Death and Taxes in terms of logo design. Did you design the logo for Death and Taxes at the end, or towards the end of the project, or
It was
partway
more
through?
beginning
Oh, towards
actually.
the beginning, and it's the same with Craft kind of towards the early part of
Yeah.
production and Broken Alliance as well. So does that help you then inform your color palette choices for the rest of
Yes.
the game or the visual identity?
I usually come up with color palette first and some of the ideas of how the game should look like, and then I go on to the logo itself and name, because that will give it a very strong visual identity, and then you don't even need to sell it to other people. You more like sell it to other people in your team if you're working together with somebody, that this is what it will be. Look at this. And having it early on also helps it start marketing as early as possible. So yeah, I can do this now because we just put it up, and I'm very happy with this one. As you might see, I put the background color the same as Steam background color. So in this one now, everything I think pops because it's kind of the outlines look more apparent because of the background colors. Yeah. Let's look at this one as well. Oh, purple. Very purple. Again, very, very poppy color. Looks, again, if you Google something and your game like goes into the list and is quite, like this is really good. It pops out. This also pops out. If you have too dark thing, even though you're like, oh, my game is so dark, I will make it blue and black only. It's harder to click on this one than this one, for example, for me at least. So yeah, don't see any crazy purple ones in here. So it's like, yeah, this is very shiny. The art for this one and the UI and everything this is just shiny. Have it shiny golden, shiny colorful rainbow vomit. That's the idea with this one.
Have you ever let the Steam page dictate the logo design, or do you just have the logo and then when it's time to test the Steam page, find the color that complements it?
Well, this the craft one, I kind of wanted to have both craft and Death and Taxes. I have to say, I did go with stuff that looks good on Steam because it's our main market that we put things on. So orange and blue, very commonly used, like opposite colors, really strongly pop out because of the contrast of the blue and the orange. Same way for the red and the blue. Red, blue, yellow is that on the color wheel, the triangle, basically, if you put it on the color wheel. This blue, yes, it's the same blue that you have the text in Steam as well. So I think it looks great on the Steam page, and that's an additional thing. For Broken Alliance, that one is just all colors, so it's like rainbow. It's that one is hard to just make for something. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. Does it work? I think maybe it looks good at least. Yeah. Yes.
And I imagine you have to keep an awful lot of things in mind with logo design, especially for marketing on Steam, with different icon sizes, different aspect ratios, different orientations and stuff.
Yeah.
And, there's not really a question there, more so there's a lot of things that you need to balance.
In here
And
you
I
can
suppose
see
you can take elements from
there's only different elements. It's really great, like I said before as well, with the Broken Alliance. If your logo works on a square and it works on a rectangle, kind of. This one, just the text, no elements in background. So also that's the blue color that it will kind of pop out because it's not everything else is like it has a border, but this one doesn't. Might pop out because of it. I'll let you know how well it works, how good the click-through rate is gonna be. Is it gonna be better than other things or not? Also, eyes bring attention. I have talked about it a bit on the marketing talk that I did some time ago as well. Eyes, characters bring attention. Have a character in here. That's always something that might give an emotion and be like, ooh, interesting for people, because that's just how we are built. We will notice living things more than and strong emotions as well, like aggression brings the most. Then it's like positive feelings, also somebody's like the Grim Reaper in here.
Not quite anything.
Doesn't access, very very bothered, poor guy. Doesn't like to do those paperworks. I think you get some emotion looking at it, and the background is really like red. And I also wanted to have a very plain red. It's not like a lot of, if you look at a lot of things, there are quite 3D backgrounds on them. Like there's something going on. No, this one is white, pure white, that's cool. They also did the pure background without gradient. Like, yes, the gradient is, you can just see when things are more, look like they're more on the front or something. Anyways, yeah. Okay, I guess that's it then. Thank you.